Hello, I'm Anthony. Today I'm going to show you how I go about thickening up the main melody in a vocal line. So this is different from harmony because everything that I'm going to show you today, all of the instances of the vocals are singing exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. This is an instance of taking multiple takes and adding them together to thicken the sound and make it's like a natural chorus effect. Now this is directly following on from a video I've made recently about vocal comping. I'll put a link to that above. If you went back and watched that video, you'd see that I was basically selecting the best instance of an individual take. But I also said during that video, the reason I'm not deleting this other stuff is because I want the opportunity to do this doubling effect, and that's what I'm doing now. So the original vocal line was this track that I've got highlighted at the moment, and that had all of the various takes all on the same track in lanes. All I did in order to create the rest of the vocal lines with one part per track is to create tracks from lanes. And if I head into the key commands, here it is. You can see I've created myself a shortcut key, so I Control-Shift-T. I do actually have a shortcut keyboard, but I've not mapped it to one of those keys at the moment, so I have to do it old school. But that's the one, create tracks from lanes, which then basically created all of these individual tracks for me now. Now I've already processed the first half of this song. You can see there's two vocal sections. First part's already being done. So I'm going to play you a short sample of this vocal, and you can see that I toggle between having a single instance of the melody, which is really clear and well defined, and then bring duplicate copies of the vocals in to create this doubling effect.
And the reflections that whisper like heathens in the still of the night, don't say I'm stalling for time.
Back down to 1.
Don't say I'm waiting to see if the sky's falling.
And then we bring the chorus back in.
Lend me your hand for a while.
So all I'm going to do today is process the second half of this song and show you how I achieved that effect. Now the most important thing to bear in mind is that there is a master vocal here. These 4 vocal tracks that are all currently soloed are not all made equal. If I show you the mixer, you can see that the primary track, very poor naming convention, I've been very lazy here, but the primary vocal track is at full volume and all of the other chorus tracks are substantially lower in the mix. A few reasons for this. I like to have a single dominant sound at all times. I don't want it to be a pure choir even when all of those other voices kick in. Second thing is that this first vocal line, the primary vocal line, is the best. I've hand-picked it such that each one of the instances of that particular take, of that particular phrase, is as good as Pauline can sing. So that's the very best, and therefore I want it to be at the forefront. There might be artifacts in the other parts that make them not absolutely perfect. I mean, something has caused them to be beaten by the track that ultimately went on to win. But when they're lower down in the mix and providing this kind of harmonic bed, a lot of those artifacts simply disappear. You know, this is just a simple function of not living in a perfect world. There is always going to be one performance that's better than the rest. By definition, looking at it the other way around, the other vocal performances aren't as good, and so they shouldn't have equal limelight, but they are still brilliant at providing this chorus effect, so it works really well. The reason I've laboured over that point is that you need a master track in order to achieve this effect, because we're going to use the audio alignment panel. Now, I am editing this song in real time. This is actual stuff that I'm doing. For this first phrase of the second part of the song, I don't want a doubled version, so I'm just going to throw that away immediately. And we'll start our processing on this second phrase. And this is what we do. I've selected the event, which means I can now set my locators to it, get my cycle going. I need to ensure that only the primary track is soloed. Now in the case of every one of these primary vocal takes, they've already been processed in terms of Vari audio, so I don't actually need to do any processing on this event at all. This is the primary.
And like a dusting of snow.
Okay, so that's the main vocal line, just as a reference point. And now we're going to start auditioning the other events to see, firstly, do they really make the grade? So now I give each audio part one final listen to make sure I'm absolutely happy with it before I do any final processing.
and like a dusting of snow.
Nothing wrong with that. And this one, zoom to locators each time just to get me centered.
And like a dusting of snow, and like a dusting.
So when I shifted this note using Vari Audio, it got distorted. Have a listen very carefully.
Like a dusting.
Now if I drag it down to the note that it should be at,
Like a dusting.
the S is distorting, so I can't have that. So what I'm going to do is cut up the part of the event that Cubase does fully understand is a D.
A dusting of snow.
And that's a perfect compromise, that's absolutely fine. So now all of these audio events have been processed, so I can unmute them all and listen to them all together.
And like a dusting of snow.
Okay, so when you heard that snow get sung, the different vocals have got a slightly different start point and it sounds a little bit jarring. That's what we're going to use the audio correction panel for. So head into audio alignment panel. If you've got any stuff in these reference or target lanes, you can just throw them away and start clean. Now what we're aiming to do here is to use the primary track as essentially a quantized grid reference that the other tracks are going to get aligned to. So when you heard those instances of snow being sung out of time, we're going to snap them all together so that they sound simultaneously. However, you can't do that on processed audio. If I try to add this selected event as my alignment reference, it won't work because it's saying that we've got real-time effects on the audio. So what I need to do is select them all and bounce. And now there is no real-time audio on those events, and I can happily add that event as the reference. All I then have to do is select everything else, add them as the targets. You can see that I have match words selected, and the alignment settings below are really going to be a salt to taste process. I generally prefer time shifting unchecked. The alignment precision depends on how accurate you want this to be. Now there is going to be inherent variance in them in these parts anyway, so I typically leave it at 100%, but the less accurate, the less tight you want the effect to be, you can bring your percentage down. Pretty much 100 is fine, and just click Align Audio. So now those instances of the word snow that we heard being sung that were quite out of time, let's see what we've got now.
And like a dusting of snow.
It's really pretty good. Now every now and again, rarely, it won't properly be able to identify the individual consonants or vowel sounds that's in the vocal line, and you might have to go in and do some audio warp correcting on these events. But literally all that's happened if I select one of these events is that it's set its own warp markers and it's time shifted the events. So it's basically done a lot of the stuff that I would ordinarily do by hand automatically. There is nothing stopping you going in and fixing it manually, but it got that one pretty much right. Now the reason why there are different numbers of audio events on each of these different tracks is not scientifically technical in any way at all. It's just that this was everything that was left that passed all of the other tests. There were no cars driving past the window, no seagulls calling outside. I didn't drop my coffee mug on the table. These are just tracks that passed every audio test. How many of them get used in the final version is a decision to be made another day. All I'm doing now is giving myself options. I'll just do one more section by way of illustration.
There goes the fever. There goes the fever. There goes the fever.
I have to decide whether or not to do anything with that. It's a little bit much, that audio. Try and pull it into control a bit more.
There goes the fever. Fever.
Yeah, happy enough with that.
There goes the fever. There goes the fever. There goes the fever.
Good.
There goes the fever. There goes the fever. There goes.
She really nailed that one. Okay, select all of the events, bounce, yes to replace, and head back into my audio alignment panel. Get rid of all the old data, select, add, multi-select, add as targets, align, listen to it.
There goes the fever.
And that entire phrase.
Was that a glint in your eye? What do you know? And like a dusting of snow, there goes the fever.
I would say the alignment panel gets it right 80-90% of the time. You can just completely leave it alone. If you really want to get finicky and go into the audio warp tool, absolutely, there's more manual correction that you might be able to do. But for the most part, with a clearly enunciated line like this, where all of the vocals are clearly identifiable and nicely recorded, generally speaking, it's going to get it right pretty much all the time. Now I've got another hour or so's processing to finish off the rest of the phrases, and that'll be that job done. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. I'll see you for the next one. Thanks a lot.